Hello, everybody, and welcome to Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies, the live video podcast where we come to talk about the movies we watch, the craft, the story, the meaning. And today, me and my co-host with the most are going to be talking about Riders of Justice, the 2020 Danish film, Riders of Justice, starring Mads Mikkelsen. What do we got to say about this flick? Where are my notes? Here we are. Okay, the log line. When his wife dies in a tragic train accident, soldier Markus returns from Afghanistan to Denmark and his teenage daughter, Mathilde. As they both try to cope with this terrible loss, a math whiz, who was also on the ill-fated train, shows up to tell him that it wasn't an accident at all. This film was written and directed by Anders Thomas Jensen. It stars, as I said before, Mads Mikkelsen, Nikolaj, Kaas, Andrea, Heick, Gadeberg, Lars Brygmann, and Nicolas Bro. It also stars Gustav Lindh, Roland Møller, and I hope I pronounced that correctly, Albert Rudbeck Lindhardt, and Birgitte Lindh, and Omar Shargawi. As far as, where are we here, folks? As far as the social nutrition checklist goes, it didn't do too well. Wouldn't have qualified for a reframe stamp. I suspect it is a union-made picture, folks. That said, I can't find out if it is. I've tried time and time again to see if it's a union-made film. Couldn't find out. So we got to give it an X. Did it pass the Bechdel test? I'm going to... Well, no, I don't think it did. They're still talking about, yes, the daughter and the mother do talk, but they end up talking about Mads Mikkelsen's character. So no. And then, is it a class-conscious film? I'm going to say no. Not in the way we've previously defined it. So I'm going to say no. So this, for the social nutrition checklist, it gets a big fat 0 right now. Anyway, with that out of the way, I think it is time to bring on my co-host with the most, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jim Chaboyko. How you doing, man?
Hi, everybody. Good. Yeah, just watched a terrifying movie called Winnipeg versus Toronto, and it was a real nail biter, but the good guys emerged victorious. Anyhow.
Well, that's fantastic to hear. You're talking about the Bombers and the CFL.
The odd CFL Monday night game, which they almost never have. But anyway, how are you doing?
Pretty damn good. I've had I guess it's a good opportunity to apologize, folks. It's my bad that we weren't on last night. You know what, the vicissitudes of life, and by the end of the evening we're getting close, and I had to reach out to Jim and say, you know what, we got to push this. So thank everybody who reached out and say, hey, is there a show tonight? People were excited about talking about this movie, Jim. And it was like, yeah. Like, even you and I, when we talked about it, it was like, oh, we got to shut up. We're wasting great chat.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Save it for tomorrow.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
That said, it's tomorrow now. And why don't we, before we get into this film, why don't we say hello to our the best chat on the internet. We've got our good friend from British Columbia, Walt65. Great to see you here. And then Matthew David Boren, our friend in Australia, in Perth, as a matter of fact. Jim, he was right off the bat asking who the Bombers were. And
I think him and Walt were conversing a bit. And
do you have anything to add to Walt's?
No, I just
Who are the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, Jim?
well, they're our local sports team. They've won the last two Canadian championships. Although this season they're coming out, they're 4-0, so they're undefeated, but they've been fairly close. They haven't been dominating teams, so it's a little bit tricky there. But we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, it's young. It's early in the season, so.
Fantastic. Okay, we've also got a Richard L. Great to see you here. That means, of course, Richard L. will be somewhere around. Will be Katie Fowler. Great to see you both hanging out,
Hey, guys.
and looking forward to hearing from hearing from everybody in the chat about this remarkable film. Yeah, the film we're watching again, that would be The Riders of Justice. Jim, before we get into the spoiler zone, give me your one-line first impression, pre-spoiler, spoiler-free first impression.
I wrote one out so as to be nice and succinct. It starts with Christmas music, ends with Christmas music. In between, there's a smorgasbord of tonal shifts, black comedy, and brutal violence. And there you go.
Well, there you go. You know what, Jim? I am going to say this is what a remarkable film. I am a little now disappointed we didn't see it. We didn't include it. Could have been like last year, could have been the year of Mads Mikkelsen.
Yeah.
That said, right now, best movie I've seen this year.
Oh, really?
And there you go. That's, to date, I'm allowing for other films to be better, but it's a high bar. I was super, super jazzed by this. And with that out of the way, folks, we are getting right into the spoiler zone. And we're going to talk about craft. And this is where Jim and I like to talk about performance, the production design, perhaps the cinematography, the costuming, that kind of, the nuts and bolts, let's say the bumper, the fender, the the upholstery of this car we call a movie. And Jim, I only have one thing to say on it. There is a moment near the very end when Mads Mikkelsen is carrying his daughter down the road, and this is the only false note where I'm like, what is he going to do? Walk her to the hospital? They're out in the goddamn country. Only false note in the entire film, and false. And all I could, even then, I'm like, but it could be, maybe they're like, we need a bit of filler. We need a bit more time with them together. We already shot the big group scene. We've wrapped all the talent, but otherwise, I cannot. There is nothing as far as performance. There's nothing only praiseworthy performances, a presentation. Yeah, this is one well-crafted flick for me.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, it's my favorite new Christmas movie. Like Die Hard, it'd be like this double bill: Die Hard and Riders of Justice. I'm sort of saying that half in jest. The cast was great. My standout, and a couple points here. The one who played Mads Mikkelsen, of course, is the lead. I just want to make sure I double checked, but I guess it is Hoffman. Yeah. Hoffman was the mathematician who initially has the theory about coincidence and there not being any coincidence. Otto Hoffman, and he approaches Mads Mikkelsen character. He's played by Nikolaj Kaas, I guess. I'm probably mispronouncing the name. Man, he was good.
Yeah.
Soulful and subtle and damaged, and these are all damaged people that we're dealing with. Tonally, it basically Mads Mikkelsen sort of joins a Danish version of the lone gunman from X-Files. And after a while, and I talked to other people about this too, is this a comedy? Like, it dawned on me very slowly that this is a very black
Okay,
comedy. But
so let's
there's,
move on to story, because
but
you're already
I was
off
just
the
gonna say,
reservation.
sorry, I was just gonna say,
No,
and the way that Mads Mikkelsen plays his guy totally dialed in, almost sort of like a
yeah.
shark. But,
Again, they're all brilliant.
yeah,
Okay, story.
story.
What's you're like, I was surprised as far as genre goes. Yeah, where do you slot this? It
Yeah.
is a revenge film. Like, it's a revenge film. It's a
Oh, yeah.
revenge flick. So big melodrama. Everyone's going to come out damaged. Regardless of how they went in, at the end they're going to be hurting. Maybe they'll be healing, maybe some redemption, but it is it is a drama and a revenge flick, a crime flick. But it's also, yeah, you mentioned it before, the tones, the multiple tones that they go through here. What do you got to say on that?
Well, it's just a really
What do you
great...
got to say? Yeah, what do you have to say to that, Jim?
Yeah. There's I always, for me, something that really worked well tonally is a total just getting a little bit off, but there was a comedy show in America called Scrubs, and they talked about death, and then there was gags in the next scene, and it's not quite that broad. It's way more subtle, but it takes a hell of a lot of confidence to be able to pull something like this off, and to do it. I think you were saying yesterday that it's kind of all over the place, but not unorganized. Like, it's an organized chaos that I think is created in this movie. And yeah,
Everything's necessary. It's all going in a direction.
One of the signs of a good movie is when you're maybe getting through the second act and you're like, I have no idea how this is going to end. Like, and so you're sort of on tenterhooks because, as using all the cues and all the signals and all the subtext and all the other movies that you've ever seen, you still don't know what's going to happen. That's sort of a good thing. It's a refreshing thing to experience.
Yeah.
But super confident.
Yeah. And it is, it's everything's well set up. Everything is paid off. And even although it's, again, well set up, in many respects, you don't know what you really have to watch to the end to really understand where the filmmakers, what the story is. It's not your generic revenge film. We get the rug pulled out of us out from under us, I think, multiple times.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of questions I had for you, Jim. And some of it was, first of all, initially I was like, what's the deal with the little drummer boy and terrorist movies? But I think actually I kind of dove deep into that, and I'm like, okay, it's just the Le Carre's little drummer girl, and that's now whenever I hear ba-rum-pa-pum-pum, I'm like, terrorism.
Yeah.
Damn you, John Le Carre. What, like some of the choices they made in the story, we know he's a soldier. Other than the scene at the beginning, and it's just super, super easy, almost boring. There's no PTSD dreams of combat. There's we don't see any combat until he is practicing his skills, or exercising his skills in a couple of the set pieces. What did you think of that? Like,
I think it's a lot of it's carried by his, he's got a weight in this movie. He's almost like a black hole again, in a good way. It's not a criticism of the actor.
Yeah.
His character is like a black hole. Like the three guys that he joins forces with are all they're a little bit goofy and eccentric, and he's always just sort of focused. He's on the mission. It reminded me of that Robert Shaw line in Jaws. He says, when the eyes, like a doll's eyes, lifeless like a doll's eyes, when he's talking about the shark, and that's what he carries this, and he's fully into this character, and he just cuts through everything, and I think Sirius, the boyfriend of his daughter, says, you're a soldier, so you approach, in his sort of heavy-handed teenager way, you're a soldier, so you approach problems with violence. And then Mads Mikkelsen's character says, well, how would a banker solve this?
No,
problem?
a baker.
Was it baker? Okay.
A baker. Well, not all models, which I think goes to one of the themes of the film, but also one of my favorite quotes from a mathematician. All models are wrong. Some are useful.
No.
But it also goes to the heart of the heart of the, in a way, like they're projecting how the story is going to play out. Because boy, it's hard to talk about that idea of chance and statistical modeling and prediction without, you're really kind of talking about one of the themes of the film, but it's also cooked into the story that we're being told something there. It's not just a pushback on the kid. It's that all these characters are applying a model of the world and trying to interpret everyone they see and predict their behavior based on a model. So the kid has got what he's learned from his psychologist mother, applying it. Gotta love European films where there's always lots of psychologists around, because mental health is somewhat important.
Yes.
Especially compared to here. But I think that's, like, it's funny. He's not even paying attention to what he's saying, because they've all applied a model, and it's only at the end that they're like, we were all wrong. We were all so fucking wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've been on a murder spree.
Yeah. There's a quick tangent. I found a video today. Actually, not a lot of channels seem to have covered this one. I found a video today that does kill counts for various movies. And so it takes a clip of the movie and it shows, and I think 49 people hit the ground, including the train accident at the start, which killed 11. But so the group themselves are responsible for a little over 3 dozen murders, essentially.
And yet, we're all made it home for Christmas. Police showed up and went, you are obviously the innocent parties here.
Equipped with your machine guns, just sitting at home and enjoying a nice meal or playing a game. Quick note about the violence, though, I think was, there was never any kind of yippee-ki-yay kind of sense about it. I don't think it was celebratory. And in fact, it was very perfunctory, as it would be. With some samurai movies, the big sword fight that they're gearing up to is over in 2 seconds. Yeah. Quarterbacks hold on to the football for 2 seconds. Sumo wrestling matches are over in 3 seconds. It's similar to this. It's not that big back and forth. It's very da-da, da-da, da-da. And he approaches it, the character of the soldier approaches it like a soldier. Yeah. He goes in and he eliminates the target rather than taking a human life. Like he's on a mission. Yeah. And I thought that was well handled, and I don't know how accurate or realistic it is, but it seemed enough to me.
Well, it felt more real, more legitimate, more earned than a lot, especially, we get kind of a weird sort of training montage.
Yeah.
And then, they're all barely competent. One of them somehow shoots the daughter, doesn't kill her, the shoulder wound, tis blood, but a flesh wound.
Thank God for shoulders.
Thank God for shoulders. But even some of the violence is, or if it is, it's on our heroes and it's played for comic effect. Like when was it Emmentaler? I should have bought that today. I was at Costco with a friend and bought some Gruyere.
Oh,
Why didn't I buy Emmentaler? I could have been chewing on it tonight. But anyway, with the blood, no, nothing hit me at all.
yeah.
You know what? Those wounds are notoriously lots of blood, no feeling, because there's not actually a lot of nerve cells up there. So yeah, you get grazed on the noggin. Like stuff like that. It's just, and again, played for comedy. Like these little bits. I can't call this a comedy. I don't think it is a comedy, not even a black comedy. I think it just uses comedy to, sometimes hidden in it is a point. Listen, I've seen over 27 psychologists. I know my, I can bullshit my way being a psychologist.
Yeah.
But do you think, Jim, like, I'm thinking they're using comedy like a lot of other action and drama films just to kind of, okay, we got to pull back a little here, or we want to make a point a different way. What do you think? Like, you buying that?
Well, a lot of things, a lot of shows about revenge, whether it's Death Wish or, how many movies are about revenge? They always talk about the cost and how corrosive it is, and it's sort of hard to get a fresh take on it. To the point where when Luke, we were talking a few weeks ago on Star Wars, Luke kills a couple stormtroopers and he doesn't gnash his teeth and weep over it, and I found that refreshing. Like, just get on with the adventure. But yeah, I there is a little bit of fretting about it. Emmentaler's given the opportunity to liquidate a target, and he doesn't, and he can't.
Okay, we're moving into meaning, which is fine. So, revenge. I actually think it's a criticism of revenge. I think you're wrong on all of that. This. Unlike other films that, there's a cost to revenge, they basically say that to give them an excuse to get in. You know what? When you look at all these characters and who they are in the film and how they're bringing all their shit from the past. And even that conversation about trying to explain something the daughter says, it's a lot easier if you got somebody to be mad at, which is all they're doing.
Yeah.
Emmentaler's a great example of, when he's kicking a dead body and talking about little piggy. Now, I'm not saying that this film is a whole bunch better. They all do get away with it. They have a huge kill count and nobody... They're all like they're together for Christmas.
Yeah.
But I do think, like, as they all understand the ramifications of the fact that their model wasn't actually explaining reality, that is the point at when Mads Mikkelsen's character, Markus, breaks down and actually kind of has to face. He is no longer able to just shoot everyone up. Of course, he started this ball rolling, you know.
Going in pretty hard on that first guy.
I mean, and even if they had just stopped there, maybe, but apparently no. Doomed.
I mean, they and none of them died. I thought for sure they were going to knock off a couple of them, but no, they're all sitting around the fire or the sort of the tree at Christmas.
Every one of them, and including the freed sex slave.
Yeah.
Forced into
Bodashka.
Bodashka. He's there. I think it is a criticism of revenge movies. Mm-hmm. None of these people, the only one who's good at it is the one who is professionally trained for it.
Yeah.
That's it. The rest of them, they barely, you see them shooting, it's like, boy, I hope those kids survive. Oh,
Yeah.
Girl gets shot. Like they're, you know, yeah, the only one delivering clinical, again, trained. Yeah, these guys they had their areas of expertise. And
Yeah.
even then
Yeah.
they're fucking wrong. Like,
Well, and that's the thing too, is that it starts off when we get to meet Hoffman and Lennart. We've
mhm.
yet to meet Emmentaler, but when we meet the two of the three that
Yeah.
the Mads Mikkelsen's character hooks
Saying
up
middle
with,
class people buy middle class semi fancy cars.
yeah, they he's being fired because he's got this grand theory that he's unveiling to the board of whatever institution he works for, and they're like, yeah, so this basically tells us the obvious, and he's not really explaining, and you think, oh, what a raw deal, but it turns out that his whole thesis, the thing that everything's based on that gets the ball rolling, it's wrong. And I guess what he didn't do is include the fact that chance or coincidence plays a role in coincidence as well,
Well,
or chance plays a role in chance, and he didn't calculate for
well,
that.
look at it where there's the one thing that worked said, hey, I'm 98 point whatever confident that guy is this Egyptian.
Mm-hmm.
Is the only time they reject evidence.
Oh, yes, that's right. Too,
They
yeah.
refit, they change the parameters.
Mm-hmm.
This is what police do.
Yep.
And we all do it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's interesting. They all kind of, and when they're looking at someone else, they can kind of sort of identify what's wrong with the other person's model. But you know what? You had the Mathilde and putting all those Post-its, because she's what if, which
Yes. Yeah.
we would all do. And again, it's a film that's also a commentary on grief.
Mm.
I think I wrote down here, Jim. So, parent of the year, should we all get the Marcus Hansen Guide to Grief and Your Child?
Yeah.
Jim, like this, I think there is a commentary on grief and how people cope with it,
Yeah.
and why the police shouldn't listen to any random chucklehead, no matter what their expertise is.
Yeah.
Here, another area where the police actually did the right thing. Yeah, there is such a thing as coincidence.
Yes. Yeah.
You know.
Or just the reading of, he basically based it all on the fact that the mathematician Lennart based his guilty finding of this one particular man, or he thought he was suspicious because he threw a sandwich and a juice out. Otto, okay.
Yeah.
Lennart's the other guy. Sorry. Based on the fact that he threw this mystery man threw a sandwich and a juice out, and then we find out later the mystery man gets home. The Egyptian gets home and he said,
"Camel
you should
piss.
You should taste the food there. It's horrible. I threw a sandwich and a juice out.
The worst part of the whole trip was the food."
Yes. Yeah.
And again, you have all these little moments that trigger, as Otto says to Mathilde, it's a chain of events upon a chain of events upon a chain of events. We live in a world, and I'm using this hand really regularly, so I'm finally wearing a watch again. Why? Because I hadn't replaced the batteries in forever, and I'm like, I gotta do this. I don't want to take it in because it's a $5 watch battery, right?
Yeah.
But you need a kit. You do need to have a proper tool to open the back. Years ago, I don't know what I did, but somehow Amazon was fucking convinced I needed a watch repair kit. And I'm like, I don't, I won't. What the hell are you talking about, eh? We have become so enamored of the algorithm and the power of the algorithm. And this whole movie is kind of saying, yeah, most of the time, if it's obvious, if it looks like a coincidence, a lot of stuff happens.
Yeah.
There is no computer that can predict all these data points. We all think, oh, big data is the thing that, maybe we're just all kind of creatures of habit. There's not a lot to predict,
Yeah, and I wonder if
Like, it's not that hard. The computer doesn't need to be that big.
Yeah, yeah. I sort of wonder if one of the bigger sort of macro meanings of this is the unknowability of life, because it not only does it start off with Christmas music and ends with Christmas music, it starts in Estonia, this this separate
With a
kind of whole
priest.
scene, and it ends in Estonia, where a little girl wants a bike, and then Mathilde's bike is stolen because that little girl wants a bike, and it sets off a chain of events, and nobody cottons on to the other people involved. Like, it's never brought around. Nobody gets a sniff. Just us as the viewers,
as the omniscient viewer.
Yes,
you know, and I think that is another, like, again, another. That's why it's a critique. That's why I do think it's kind of a critique of a lot of things, but especially that idea of fate, and which is why I'm wondering also, because it does start on what's really, it's not a hymn, it is a Christmas carol, but there's a lot of Markus's character hates the church. I'm sure there's somewhere in his backstory on why he does. You know what? But as these people search for why, and you could argue the wisdom of a good priest and a lot of, let's say, faith traditions is, sometimes just you got to give it up to God. Just life's that way. It's you wish to make it easier to process it, because that's a big chunk of grief. Part of it is just being with it until you can process it, and make it fit in your world.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of church in this film, actually. It doesn't just start with, it's a Christmas. It's not just a Christmas movie. It's a priest. It's an Orthodox priest outside of church, ends on Christmas, ends, in the priest's home. Guess the priest's okay with buying a illegal.
Who's gonna know?
Who's gonna know? You're absolutely right.
What omniscient creature?
Or maybe it's not even a year. I keep thinking it's a year, but it's actually probably a really kind of a very late fall, and then it's Christmas.
Yeah. That's
notwithstanding everyone got shot.
and healed.
Yeah. What about actually, you know what? Before we do a what about, let's see what's going on in the chat. It's looking pretty active.
Yeah.
The chat's looking active here, folks.
Wow.
Okay, there are clearly black comedy bits in this flick. Yeah, holy doodles. Oh, Matt had a rant. Okay, I am going to scroll up, everybody, because wow, did we miss a lot.
You got into it. This is a chunky movie. It's hard to...
Wow, look at that. Oh, you know what? This is going to be tough. This is going to be tough, Jim. I think, folks, and this is no slight on... it looks like you guys are taking... Wow, it's like a party in there.
I think Walt had a couple things that he addressed to you specifically.
Yeah. Okay, let's see if I can. And you know what, folks? If you want Jim or I to speak to something specifically, at me. So at ROB, Rob Christensen, it'll come up in the browser, and then it'll be highlighted. And as I scroll through, I can, they want us to speak to this specifically. Don't at Jim, because it won't highlight and I won't be able to pull it up. Or I'll be scanning through. Okay, let's hear where we go. Let's see. Let's looking at Walt and strongly disagree. The ending gunfight was pure fantasy, cinematic, but not real. Sure.
Is that...
No, I'm just grabbing one of these things. And I think it was in relation to what I was saying, because it's like, yeah, look at them. They're all, again, shot the kid.
Yeah. There was a bit of a, like...
Which I thought was awesome and funny, in part because it was also in the shoulder. Like, and in a movie in the shoulder... that it's the
practically
cue to
harmless.
this person will survive.
Mhm. And that's where the violence got a little bit. There was that one shot with all four of them sort of screaming and shooting, and including Otto with his one arm, and
Yeah.
just sort of firing.
Well, there is a bit of the wild,
indiscriminately.
like a standoff, like
Yeah.
a Western, an old school, old timey Western film standoff.
Mhm.
You know,
Which is I think handled differently than when Markus goes in on his own as a soldier and sort of takes out the opposition.
yeah. Here's something Matthew Matthew says, well, people trying to put prediction to the past events is like people trying to put stories or the perspective of stories into random events. That's exactly it. I think that's part of the point I think the filmmakers are making here, is that is what they're trying to make sense of what happened. This terrible thing, especially as our lives become more and more safe, it becomes harder to process when shitty things do happen. You look at the kid from Ukraine. There's a kid who's like, oh, you know what? I got sold into sexual slavery by my own mother. He had learned long ago. Even Lindhardt.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
him.
Lindhardt,
Being abused as a child in one of the most heartbreaking moments when Mads is going to do what he does, is go beat somebody up, Markus, and Lindhardt reacts the way he does because
that's the past for him.
Yeah. Which, even now, like, I mean, it's and having it play out that way was so unadorned, oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
So I think that, and so, Matthew says, he goes, stories, religion, news, media. Yeah, we're forever, we have a model of the way we think the world's supposed to work. Mads Mikkelsen, you could say he's the good or evil, and bad people got to be killed, which is most revenge films. Most revenge films, it's always presented as that's the bad guy, that's the good guy. Rarely is there any ambiguity. And here is the way it's so when the bad guy dies, we all get a visceral release because we've been presented with this is the only way it can be interpreted. And I think this film is attacking that, critiquing that, saying, well, no, actually, there are a lot of things we don't really know like we think we know. And that they still allow, and I think this is, maybe this is something Matt, or not Matt, but even Walt, there is a bit of the filmmaker at the end kind of, I think Matt was thinking about him writing himself into a corner, and I'm not sure about that. I think he was kind of going, yeah, I'm still going to let them get away with it. I think he those characters are so sympathetic, even Mads Mikkelsen's character, even, Oscar, you can feel he may be all stoic and everything, but you can feel the emotion beneath.
Yeah.
And again, how he reacts to, her just, well, why can't I believe in God? That's stupid. Like he's and not in a, it is. It's one of those things. It's like, wow, you're a shitty parent, but you're giving it your best.
When she says, you need help, you need to talk to somebody. I do. We talk. Not the same thing there, Dad. But
even,
Walt's,
I was
just going to say Walt's comment. He says, Rob, on revenge, the audience expects some revenge. That's we get the finger breaking scene. And Jensen does give it to us. So that undercuts his message somewhat.
That I do. Yeah, there's a bit of the, because we needed to see the bad guy in a bit of cruelty.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of I want my cake, but I really want to eat it too. It's a tasty cake. I don't
Yeah.
want it just sitting there. I want a
Mhm.
bite. But I do, and that's exactly it though, that this is a film intentionally going somewhere. He's going to criticize a lot of these things, but he's still writing a revenge movie. And
Mhm.
revenge movies have certain genre expectations. And either he's going to kill all these sympathetic characters,
Mhm.
or he's going to give us a bit of okay, well, I've made my point. Anyway, let's have the bad guys die and everyone get together for Christmas.
Well, he and the point where they realize they've gone after the folks that they've gone after for the wrong reasons, or their whole initial premise was
Again,
completely
their whole
wrong in the first
model
place.
is wrong.
Their whole model is wrong.
The
So this was
model is
all,
wrong. Some are
and it's that,
all models are wrong. Some are
yes,
useful.
but
And, oh, yeah.
I was just going to say, I think part of the ingredients of this is that powerlessness, that when a loved one of yours dies violently, whether it's an accident or whatever, there's that need to do something. And then that something presents itself here as a motorcyclist group that killed off one of their own who was going to be
Yeah.
a stool pigeon.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, and then it's written so that it's too late to back down once they realize it. So
They're past
they're going to have a collision anyway.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's it on purpose because the
Mhm.
guy's still writing a revenge movie.
Yes. Well, yeah.
And,
And that's,
yeah, it's perfectly on purpose.
Mhm.
While at
Oh,
the
well.
same time, yeah, it's still it still needs to it would be a much different film if these guys got their just desserts.
Mhm.
Just desserts. And let's even that, a biker gang called Riders of Justice, and these
Yeah.
guys thinking they're the real Riders of Justice. You really start to kind of go, is there any justice?
Mhm.
Just because let's say how we've been told in the film, these are the good guys, and who would want anything to happen to Mathilde? And I think there's again another thing about manhood here.
Yes. Yeah.
Because the only one who had a reasonable model was the quote fag who has good recipes. And I'm gonna punish you twice because you're a crybaby. He's literally being tortured because he's not man enough. And it's like, what has this kid done? Oh, nothing other than be a supportive boyfriend, be willing to say something. Like you say, you're right. Yeah, and his heavy-handed and that self-confidence based on no life experience that only a
Yeah.
teenager can deliver. But
Yeah.
he's the only one who's actually even close to being right.
Mhm.
And that
Yeah.
she's trying to process her grief, and you're trying to process your grief, and you're doing this, and we could just look at Sirius's, and I'm trying to figure out there's got to be some nice poetic reference in using that name.
Yeah. Yeah. There's one scene. Doesn't he say, "I'll meet your father. I don't believe in revenge anyway," or something to that effect? And there's a couple of
that's
scenes
exactly it. Yes.
at that first dinner when they meet, the three of them have this awkward dinner, and he's standing behind her in a very mature pose with his hands on her shoulders as the supportive boyfriend.
Yeah.
And the father's being the troublesome one,
Yeah, the one who's the moody one who won't fucking say anything. Walt says Jensen was doing a complex figure skating jump with this movie. Oh, that's a great visual metaphor there, man. And he didn't quite land the ending perfectly, so it is very good, but perhaps not a classic. I'm not quite sure about that. We'll come back to that. Matt says war itself being a motivation for revenge is this commentary on collective trauma as well as individual trauma. I think that might be giving it too much credit.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fair point.
Yeah.
But
I think that might be going a little bigger, but it is at the same time. Yeah, it is. So you could say it's a, how would the police interpret it? A gang war. So yeah, maybe he got something. You might have something there, Matt. I have to think about that one.
Yeah, one of the other things too I wanted to bring up was the character of Bodashka. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But the way, when we initially meet
Who
him,
actually another one who practices non-revenge.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's sitting on the couch as the house is getting machine gun at the end, and they're saying, I am unhit. I am unhit. It's not that all the bullets missed me, but he said, I am unhit.
Yeah.
And he's just sort of sitting there, didn't take cover. But that's sort of a really neat inclusion. And we were talking a little bit about it in terms of meaning, that I think we brought it up a little bit yesterday. We don't ever pre-chat about what we say, folks, but just in our call yesterday. And I think you said that, how did you put it now? That nobody is wasted in this movie. And he's a throwaway. He is what would normally be a throwaway character.
Absolutely,
or a sight
right.
gag in a harder Hollywood movie, and he actually comes back and turns out to be a really nurturing individual, and a nice part of like a healer type. Still a supporting character, but I love the inclusion. He was almost one of my favorite characters in the movie.
Yeah,
so.
no, it was, and yeah, we get to know him a bit more. Like every character is given time.
Yes, yeah.
They're all given enough time on screen for us to, they get fleshed out a bit.
Yeah.
Back to him for a sec. Walt's going after phony cinematic from the pro musician in my family. Other phony cinematic from the pro musician in my family is the guy playing the horn perfectly after years not playing. Okay, Grinch. It's like, you know what? This is, no movie's realistic. We should all just watch Dogma.
Yeah.
You know what? Any of your war movies, don't watch them, because they're certainly not capturing war. They're all fucking false narratives of human horror. It never plays out that way. We should stop watching silly comedies, not realistic. The filmmaker gets to have a moment of that everyone gets a little celebration. I have no problem with that. Otherwise, we should get a professional soldier in here, a professional everybody, to tell us how this movie's wrong. Yeah. Sorry, Walt. I just think that's like why? What do you care? What does the professional musician care? Really? They're that wrapped up? They're like, well, that's not right. Well, then don't watch movies with music.
He did.
What the fuck are we going to do?
He did an embouchure kind of thing. I know when I haven't played, my lips swell a bit, but you take your own perspective from your experience.
Yeah. Anyway,
but
all right. Well, on that note,
and then was there anything that set you off? I was thinking that this is a very male heavy movie. Maybe necessarily so. Being the subject, there's really just the wife, I think, and the daughter, right? And the wife is killed off.
And then a couple of psychologists. And actually, anyone who's even referred to other than the serious, with any kind of, let's say, emotional capacity, is usually a woman, except for the one daughter who dimes out Otto because of what ended up on Instagram.
Oh yes, that's right too.
But also using that some egg on, which I think a purposely written line.
Yeah.
Because real men break other men's fingers. Beat them up, punch them in the nose when they're talking too much.
So
Yeah.
is that there's a scene at the very end with Otto and Marcus where they're talking about the treatment of each other's daughters, and Otto's daughter was killed when he was drunk driving, basically. And so Marcus sort of throws that in his face, and instead of fleeing, Otto sort of shows a little bit of he just sort of stands up and he cops to it. He says, "Yes, I was a different man. I was a selfish man." And that was kind of interesting, because I wonder if coming at the end too, if that scene was a statement about uh, manhood and approaching conflict and hardship in two different ways.
Yeah. I, you know, I do think there is a commentary on masculinity in this film.
Mm.
Where do you see some of the most toxic masculinity? Yeah, fucking gangs, you know, um, police, the military. But even allowing for it, you think of, so-called geek subcultures.
Yeah,
And who is, I mean, mind you, we're given a reason, but it's still Emmentaler's the next angriest man,
yeah,
you know, like kicking the dead body, you know, and totally channeling his own bullied experience, right?
mm.
But also talking about that bullying experience, that getting bullied,
Yeah,
you know. Yeah, I do. I'm wondering though, is that we don't know enough about Otto pre, but yeah, it could very well be. I was selfish. You could argue any that big bro douchebag, they're really just quite selfish.
hmm
Um, I don't think Will Smith was being, worried about his wife at all. It was his own ego was at stake. That's why he
hmm
hit Chris Rock. That was it.
yeah,
Maybe his wife got on his ass. So what? Heck, be man enough to tell your wife, yeah, we're gonna do something about this, but we're not, I'm not gonna go go
yeah,
slug a guy, you know. But
yeah. And it was a great scene. It was a nice sort of, typically towards the end of movies, you get the shorter scenes and the quicker cuts, and it's all leading up to a certain point. And that was a nice sort of I think it was probably the last long scene with any kind of real dialogue between two people, other than, not real dialogue, but, where it was an actual kind of a back and forth for a little bit. And I thought it was very well handled too. But
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no, I mean, he's the only one. Well, he is. Why he is the one who has, and again, you could almost argue the physically damaged person who's done terrible things in his past, which is why he's got that damage,
hmm
is the one who's got the guts to keep poking Mads,
mm.
to keep poking uh, um, Marcus, and to challenge him on his behavior,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is a gutsy thing to do,
yeah,
and's got nothing to do with, you know.
yeah,
Yeah, I do.
yeah.
There's a lot of, you know what, I'm going to say it, a lot of challenging toxic masculinity in here. And I also think it's, remember that German film? Nowhere near as good as this.
Yes.
But
hmm
another one where that German Christmas film where it was also kind of
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
there's something deeper going on here, a deeper commentary about being what being a man is, you know.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
you know,
I think it
I,
was about a year and a half ago,
yeah,
that one.
and yeah, I think actually some of the most there's really gentle moments there when Lennart, um, the Badashka offers us, hey, do you wanna have sex?
Yeah.
Um, and Leonard's, no, I'm good. And, handles it classy, I'm going to
Mm.
say, like, hey, I appreciate the offer. Like that he's like he gives that young man agency. Like he said, no, you have a choice. I appreciate your offer. I'm assuming it was freely offered, and so I'm freely refusing it. No, and all of a sudden, that little bit, giving that guy, Badashka, a bit of dignity,
Yes.
becomes like it hits. So there's these moments of, and yes, the best moments of manliness are not when they're shooting the shit out of each other, is these moments of hearing each other and acknowledging someone's dignity,
And then, in that scene that you're referring to, after the offer of sex is passed up on, Bodashka says, well, thank you for
thanks
thank you for that. So
yeah.
Thanks for them. Yeah. So that's that was sort of an interesting one too. And
well, and after that, Badashka becomes part of the family.
And then there's that argument at the table. Should he work 30 hours or 37? Well, I don't think you can make him work more than 30. And, using Danish labor law, which is sort of, one of those weird comic moments, spread throughout the movie.
And then, of course, my mother paid our au pair, blah, 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 more. It's like, I mean, this is why it's always tough to talk about class consciousness in some of these foreign films.
Well, yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say, it's hard for me to tell, I don't know the visual signs of that in Denmark.
Yeah. Well, and it's also because, some of the further north you go, the more, let's say, petty bourgeois they are because of that corporate, capitalism, that willingness to negotiate with labor for labor peace. And labor, unlike organized labor in North America historically, has gone for more time off, more benefits. If you want to trade productivity, you can have all these things as long as you don't bug us after 6. You don't, you look at, we want minimum 6 weeks vacation for everybody, plus other holidays. Right? That idea. So all of a sudden, everyone, it's why they have what we would call a middle class, because they just keep pouring that into social services. That if you're not a migrant, your life is so much better.
Yeah.
But heck, I can't even tell if it was union made. It probably was. It is Europe.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I can't tell.
Yeah.
Here is a question I did have for you, Jim.
Sure.
Going back. Okay, here's chosen family, because this is another chosen family. But I'm starting to think that unless it has a literal family, unless it's about a literal family, what is the deal with film and chosen families?
Yeah, I think when we started this live stream, that was the first few weeks that we had, the first few movies we watched, we were noticing that a lot. Maybe it's a universal, maybe it's been happening this whole time. Maybe it's just shorthand for, you have 2 hours to create a community of sorts. So maybe that's the go-to setting, or the sort of the easiest way to get to that community is to create a family. But I agree with TV as well. I mean, anything from How I Met Your Mother to Friends to, these are sort of about chosen families. Et al.
Yeah.
So I think that's a fairly common thing. I haven't really thought too deeply about it or looked into it. It's just so common. Like I do notice it all the time now. Not in everything, of course. And when it's not about chosen family, it's about people being alone. I guess.
Yeah.
I guess is the
their
flip side to that.
disconnection.
But any Batman movie, perhaps, or you might have a dyad or something.
That inability to connect because they're protecting us all.
Yeah.
Spider-Man's core problem. Again, the part of me is just let the kid be a kid.
Yeah.
I think we somehow managed to survive before Peter Parker was born. Maybe we can allow him to go to school. Jim, why don't we take a brief moment? Why don't you tell us about what we're watching next?
All right, I got to make sure I get the title right for this one. It's Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. The big hit from the spring. I know the trailer was on everyone's lips for a while there, and
of course, all the A24 lovers going,
another
more genius from this studio.
My son even he was describing something to my wife the other day, and he goes, typical A24 stuff. So that's sort of become part of the lingo, I guess, when you're a movie fan.
All right, well, I think it's time to wrap it up, Jim.
Sure.
We've had a great hour. Monster chat that we'll never get to. Everybody's like, okay, we're done. It's like I'm just glad they can entertain each other. It's one of the reasons of the best chat on the internet. We'd be here for another 3 hours, and this movie is worth it. But that is not the question I'm asking you right now, Jim.
Sure.
We've given this director a pass or a fail.
Absolutely. Yes. A+.
I couldn't agree more. Do you have any final thoughts before we shut her down on this late Monday school night, as opposed to the other Sundays we do it?
I wish I looked as good as Mads Mikkelsen with a graying beard. That's about all I'll have to say about that. But this thing needs some trim. But nothing too profound. I think we covered a lot of the bases. But yeah, just a solid cast, solid ensemble. Really good. This director has quite. I was just before the show started, I took a look at his CV. Holy cow, he's directed tons of Danish stuff and
Oscar winner. Oscar nominated. Was one of the poor bastards. Is his first Hollywood film, English language Hollywood film, was that Riders.
That Stephen King thing,
Darkness,
Dark Tower.
Whatever. The Dark Tower. Yeah, there you go.
Idris Elba vehicle or something to that effect.
Yeah, well, Matthew McConaughey.
Oh, that's right.
And a kid.
Yeah.
Of course, he's one of like 4 credited writers. That was one of those ones where adding another pass did not help. So everybody, thank you all very much. One thing I want to add is, Walt, I think it's too close. I do know that this is right now my favorite movie of this year. Does not mean it'll be my favorite movie by the end of the year. Classic, only time will tell. You know what? But I will. The thing I do want to say is every film has faults. There is no perfect movie. There are moments of what? Again, I still like one of the things. The only thing that sticks out at me was the carrying him down the road and like. What? Why?
Yeah.
You're out in the fucking country. Where are you going with her? I do. I think this is an outstanding film. If you haven't seen it already, well, you kind of know what the general gist of it was. But a great plot, where things weave in and out without it being like Christopher Nolan. It's almost Nolan-esque, but where Nolan seems to revel in obscuring everything for the audience. This guy's like, no, I'm going to assume you're all adults. But I think this movie is going to reward me for the next couple of weeks. Oh, fuck, that was a nice turn. And that was a nice tease of something that pays off later. Definitely the most thematically rich movie I've seen all year.
Yeah.
It maybe for the last couple of years, like so much, but properly woven together.
Yeah.
Alrighty, everybody. Sorry, you're going to say, Jim?
No, I just again make watching foreign movies makes you want to watch foreign movies.
Yes.
That's the thing. They are rewarding.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Jim. And we keep getting introduced to more and more talent
Yes,
in front of and behind the camera. Everyone just so it's a chef's kiss is a great cinema meal. All right. With that out of the way, say goodnight to our wonderful chat. Matthew from Perth, almost the antipode of Winnipeg. Walt, of course, Walt65, Walt's Flicks Picks over on the left coast, and Richard L. and Katie Fowler. Thank you guys so much for popping in, and looks like you guys had a great chat. You know what? It's a tough one on these big films where we got lots to say. So anyway, again, remember, folks, next week we are going to be watching Everything Everywhere All at Once. We're going to watch it sometime this week. We'll be talking about it next week, 9:45 p.m. Central Daylight Time, Universal Coordinated Time -5 for those of you not in the North American system of time zones. All right. Okay. I guess
Sounds
that's
good.
time to